Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. My name is Madhavananda Das, and this is our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. Narayanam namaskrityam naram shaiva narotamam devim saraswatyam vyasam tato jayam hujirayat vedi ramayane shaiva purane bharate tata adavante chamadye chahari sarvatra giyate mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande shri gurum dinataranam paramananda madhavam paramananda he madhava padunga luchi makaranda se makaranda panakori anande bolo hari hari harinka name vandavela parikorive chakadola se chakadolanga paraye manamo rahu nirantare manamo nirantare rahu har Krishna boli jiva jao har Krishna boli jao jiva mote udara radha dava mote udara radha dava mote udara radha dava dharma projita kaitavo chat paramo nirmatsaranam satam Vedyam Vastavamattava Shivadam Tapatrayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimba Paraishvara Sadhya Vidya Virudyate Chakriti Vishu Shushuvistakshana Nigamakopataro Galitam Phalam Shukamukadamitra Dravasam Yutam Pivata Bhagavatam Rasamavayam Mohoroho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka Anato Pasamam Sakshad Bhakti Yogam Hadhoksaje Lokasya Janito Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhitam Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. We're continuing our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. We're reading from the third canto, chapter 29. This is the teachings of Lord Kapila about pure devotional service. And this is our 14th session on verses 11 to 12, which speak about Suddha-bhakti. In this session today, we're going to continue with the question we raised in our last session, which was on Sunday, and on Wednesday we had some Radharani Katha for Radhastami. And the question was, so all this is really nice, but where do I fit in to all this discussion of Suddha-bhakti or pure devotion? And in that last session, we elaborated something on the words of our revered spiritual master, Sri Srimad Govinda Maharaj, who spoke, and he said that our only hope, our only qualification is our disqualification. So in this session, we're going to continue these heartfelt aspects of ātma-krandana, the crying of the soul, and what's known as viṣāda-yoga, the yoga of lamentation. So we'll read the verses. Mad guna shruti matrena mayi sarva guhasaye manogatira vichina yata gangam vasombudo lakshanam bhakti yogasya nirgunasya hudaritam hoityavavayitaya bhakti purushottame. Translation: the manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganga flows naturally down toward the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows toward the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, the basic principle of this unadulterated pure devotional service is love of Godhead. Madguna Shruti Matrina means, quote, just after hearing about the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, these qualities are called nirguna. The Supreme Lord is uncontaminated by the modes of material nature, therefore he is attractive to the pure devotee. There's no need to practice meditation to attain such attraction. The pure devotee is already in the transcendental stage, and the affinity between him and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is natural and is compared to the Ganga water flowing toward the ocean. So again, in our last session, we spoke something about this phrase, Madguna Shruti Matrena, that just by hearing about Krishna, Manogatira Vichina, Vichina means continuously, it attracts the course of the heart and mind to Krishna. And how that's not really us. And as we spoke in our last session, if we speak about some topic, it's very, very important to know, how is this relevant to me? If it's not relevant to me, if it's just theoretical, then it really has no meaning. So in this verse, it says, Madguna Shruti Matrena Manogatira Vichina Sarva Guhasaye. Sarva means all, and Guha means a cave, or also means a heart. Asaye means a shelter. So Krishna is literally the heart of hearts of everyone, or he's the shelter of everyone. So how is this? How do we fit into this? And I'd like to just look back a little bit in some of our discussions. We spoke about bhakti and the mode of ignorance and the mode of passion and the mode of goodness. And then in these verses, we've been speaking about how the importance of saranagati is there, and how that saranagati is based upon faith, but there's different types of faith. And even if you have that faith, it's not enough, but you also have to have ruchi. And that ruchi comes from Guru Seva. As Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes in his commentary in the Bhagavatam, Satcha Shavana Kirtana Moyi Bhakti Satsangam Vina Nasudasi Bhavatiti Satsangam Pratayate. That even you do bhakti, it's not sweet without proper association. And we spoke something about how the embodiment of that, the last limit of that ruchi is the gopis of Vrindavan, and in particular Srimati Radharani. And we spoke something in that regard about the amazing story of the deity of Amarnath and why it is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became so ecstatic in front of the deity of four-armed Vishnu. And so then in our last session, we spoke something about this viṣāda-yoga, or the yoga of lamentation. The nature of devotees, the nature of bhakti, is they always think themselves fallen. And some people commented this is not a very good program if you want to make money, to advertise yourself as being the most useless person. But the Manasamhita describes that if you want to make advancement, if you're a wise person, then you should give up material prestige. Samana brahmano nityam udijet viṣāda eva. This is poison, viṣāda. We've been speaking about this viṣāda-yoga. So here, the Manasamhita says that the real poison is this material prestige. Amritashyeva changsharyad avamanasya sarvada. And the real nectar is when people abuse you and disrespect you. We spoke some story, I think a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, about St. Francis of Assisi and how he was traveling with one of his students, and it was a very rainy night. It was very, very cold, and they were trying to reach the monastery, where they could have some shelter. And finally they got there soaking wet, freezing, and very, very hungry. And they knocked on the door, and the person who answered didn't recognize them and started abusing them. And said, "Get out of here. Who are you?" And the person who was with Francis said, "Well, sir, we belong here, please." "No, go away." And slammed the door shut in his face. And Francis turned to that brother, and with a big smile on his face, he said, "This is nectar." He said, it's not nectar when people give us respect, but it's nectar when we have to stay out in the cold and we're treated like dogs, and we're standing freezing in the rain, and we're hungry, and we're soaking wet, but we do that for the pleasure of our Lord. The Mana Samhita goes on to say, "Sukham hyava mata sete sukham cha patibuddhyate sukham charati loke smin avamanta vinashyati." Because if you learn to tolerate dishonor, then your agitation will subside, your lust and anger and things will go away, and then you'll be very happy in your life. Sukham hyavamata seti sukham chapati buddhite. You'll be able to sleep peacefully, you'll be able to move about peacefully, but the person who insults you because of the result of his offense will become embarrassed, and his happiness in this life and the next will be vanquished. So in our last session on these verses, we quoted a verse which is composed by Srila Sanatana Goswami and quoted by Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's also quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where he describes himself. Na prema shavanari bhaktirapi yogo taba vaishnavo jnanam va subhakarma va kihadaho sajjatir apyaskirva hinartadika sadaki tvai tatapya chajamula sati he gopi janavalabha vyatayate ha ha marashayamam. He said, I have no prema, I have no quality, no ability to do Shravan and Kirtan. I have no bhakti. I'm not a yogi. I'm not a Vaishnava. I have no knowledge. I have no pious activities. I don't come from a good family. But I have one hope. Ha madashayavamam. This asha is there. That I know the hinardadika sadaki tvai tatapi chijamula sati. That Krishna is very, very kind to the most fallen. So Guru Maharaj used to say your only qualification is your disqualification. And we should live in reality. And living in reality is the ecstasy of insignificance. There's a kind of happiness in that. And saintly persons understand that. But materialistic persons, they have a very difficult time. There's a nice poem that I'd like to recite with you. This is from a folk song by a Canadian folk singer named Sarah Price. This is one of Anupani Radha's favorite songs, so I'll go ahead and recite this. As I was a-walking, I heard a complaining. I spied an old woman, the picture of gloom. She stared at the mud on her doorstep. 'Twas raining, and this was her song as she wielded her broom, as she used her broom. Life is a toil and love is a trouble. Beauty will vanish and riches will flee. Pleasures will dwindle and prices they double. And nothing is as I would wish it to be. There's too much worriment goes into a bonnet. There's too much ironing goes into a shirt. There's nothing it's worth all the time you spend on it. There's nothing that lasts us but trouble and dirt. In March it's mud. It's snow in December. The midsummer breezes are loaded with dust. In fall, the leaves litter. In rainy September, the wallpaper rots and the candlesticks rust. There are worms in the cherries and slugs on the roses. There are ants in the sugar and mice in the pies. The rubbish of spiders no mortal supposes, and ravaging roaches and damaging flies. It's sweeping at 6 and dusting at 7. It's victuals at 8 and dishes at 9. It's potting and panning from 10 till 11. We scarce break our fast till we plan how to dine. From floor to the ceiling and from corner to center, forever at work and forever alert, no rest for a day, lest the enemy enter. I spend my whole life in a battle with dirt. Last night in my dreams, I was stationed forever on a far little rock in the midst of the sea. My one chance of life was a ceaseless endeavor to sweep off the waves as they swept over me. Alas was no dream. Ahead I behold it. I see I'm helpless, my fate to avert. She laid down her broom, and her apron she folded. She laid down and died, and was buried in dirt. So this is life. This is material life. But we don't like to live in reality. We like we like illusion. But as we often comment, reality, no matter how unpleasant, is always preferable to illusion. So we should live in this. Now, this is a mundane poem, and you may say, well, this is not so tasteful for the devotees. But we should understand something very deep about the nature of bhakti. And I think we'll speak about this today, and in our next session also. We'll probably have, I think, 3 more sessions on these 2 verses at least. I'd like to read some things to you from some of the writings of our 6 Goswamis. Today I'd like to read you a verse from Utkalika Valari, which is the last writing of Srila Rupa Goswami. And it's said that this was his swan song. There's an expression in English, swan song. Swan song means that when the swan is about to die, it sings its last song. And that song is its most beautiful song, because that song expresses its heart and feelings. And so this Utkalika Valari expresses the heartfelt feelings of Srila Rupa Goswami. And in verse 26, he prays, Kwa jano yam mataiva parama, kwa dura pamrati babir apyada, iyam ulatya jarjaja, guru utarishadura tatapimam. Kwa jana ayam mataiva pamara. Who is this fool, this pamara, this very low-class person? Kwadura pamrati bhakti. Where is that divine love, that rati, which is so difficult to obtain, even by great, great devotees? When I start thinking about that, then ulayati, I start shaking. And I become very, very frightened. How will I attain that great love? But then, Guru atarshadura tatapi mam. Still he says, I have this intense thirst to attain that. This is called mahati asha. Mahati asha means the great hope. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught us that niraparadi namloy pai premadana, that if we simply chant the holy name without offense, minor clause, then we'll get Krishna prema. But how can we always chant that holy name? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the last chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, he reveals his heart. It's his swan song. And what is the swan song? The last song of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was some verses, 8 verses that he composed in Jagannath Puri Dham. And the 3rd of those verses describes Chanadapi Sanichina Taroriva Sahismana Manina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. That if you want to always chant Kirtaniya Sadahari, then we have to consider ourselves to be very, very low and fallen, and be as tolerant as a tree. Give all respect to others and never expect any honor for ourselves. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has written some commentary on these verses. He says, Uttamahana apanake mani tunadaram, dui prakari sahishnuta kore brikshasam. That these are the symptoms of someone who chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This is an important point. It's not that I become humble and then I chant, but that it's not that the chanting is dependent upon the holy name. Well, Prabhu I'm not really very humble right now, so maybe later on I'll chant, but not right now because I'm not really humble. Or as a friend of ours, one former sannyasi used to say, sometimes it would make a joke and say, Prabhu, please excuse me for my obeisances and accept my offenses. Sometimes we take it in a cheap way to offer respect to the devotees. But here, indirectly, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is describing that this is a symptom of someone who chants the Hare Krishna mantra. And although that person is uttamahana, he's a very exalted person, his nature is ātma-krandana mani-chunadama. He thinks himself lower than the grass in the ground. What is the nature of the grass? The grass is such a humble thing. You step on it and it just goes down. It doesn't protest. It doesn't shout at you, look, I'm going to get my lawyer. You're going to get sued. You stepped on me, buddy. But the grass accepts its humble position. And the nature of grass also, it's so humble that you never hear the grass speaking about individuality. Look, I want to be an individual. I want to be a strong individual blade of grass. But there's a whole lawn. And the symptom, this is a symptom of kirtan, is that we all work together in the kirtan. Kirtan is very, very wonderful because it's not about any particular person, but it's about Krishna and the holy name. And therefore this is a symptom of kirtan, it's a symptom of Krishna kirtan. And he says that dvipakare, in two ways, he tolerates. One, he feels himself lower than the straw in the street, grass in the ground. And the other is he tolerates like a tree. And the nature of a tree, it stands there in the wintertime, it stands there in the summertime when it's hot, it stands there in the rainy season and tolerates the rain. When some young boy and girl come and the boy pulls out his pocket knife and starts carving their initials in the tree doesn't slap him or complain, he just tolerates that. And these are the qualities of someone who can chant the holy name. Now, as we'd like to discuss, I think probably more in our next session, how do we cultivate these feelings of humility? I sometimes give the example that when I grew up as a young boy, the house we lived in rural America, when we first moved in, it had no electricity and no water. And our water we had to get from a well. In India, you call them a tea well, and pump it. And that particular well, you could pump it all day long and not get one drop of water out. And we learned a trick. You have to, what you call, prime the well. You have to pour a little water in. If you pour a little water into the well, into the pipe there, then there's a cup down below, and that cup catches the water you poured in, and then it goes down, and you can get more water out. So you have to put water in to get water out. Although the well is the source of the water, not your little cup. So in a similar way, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is Swarat, it's independent. It's not dependent upon humility. Rather, that humility comes from the chanting of the holy name. But in the beginning of our spiritual life, even though it may be artificial, it's beneficial for us, just like priming the well, to act like we're humble, but not the way our sannyasi friend said. Please accept my offenses and forgive me for my obeisances. So that's the nature of a tree. It tolerates, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, and still it gives its fruits and flowers and shade to everyone. It gives shelter to everyone. And that's the nature of a Vaishnava who chants the holy name. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in the previous chapter in Madhya Lila, Sarvotama Apanaki Hina Korimani, that this is the nature of a pure devotee. Although he's the most exalted person of all, he still considers himself to be the lowest of all. So this is Ashabandha. This is the great hope. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, again, Madhya Lila chapter 23, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes Krishna Kripa Kori Bina Dhrida Kori Jani. That this is the nature of a devotee who has the Saranagati. And we've been speaking about this Saranagati as such an important principle in Suddha-bhakti and how the Saranagati develops. Now here we're hearing a symptom of someone who has that Saranagati. Krishna Kripa Kori Bina, Dhrida Kori Jani. They have this Dhrida Kori, this firm hope this firm belief that Krishna's going to show his mercy. That's my only hope. So our Goswamis, although they're the most exalted persons, repeatedly they speak in such a humble, humble way. And they do this for two reasons. One is for loka siksha, to teach us how to approach Krishna, teach us, give up your pride, give up your position, and accept your humble fate. Accept that your whole life, what is the value of your life, as we're reading in this poem, huh? This woman fought her whole life against dirt. That's her life. This is my life. I'm sweeping, I'm folding clothes, I'm ironing, I'm cooking. That's my whole life. And then what do I do at the end of my life of fighting with dirt? I'm buried in the dirt. That's it. And such a life then is useless. And it's ironic that such persons, when you speak to them, they'll say, no, everything is fine, and we should be very positive. But they have no hope, they have no future in their life. And the devotees, sometimes they say, wow, you people are really depressing. You people are, but that depression, that's the source of the greatest happiness. This is the ecstasy of insignificance. Yesterday we were hearing something from Krishna Kun, from Srila Raghunath Das Goswami's Braja Bilas Stava about Srimati Radharani. It's a very, very nice discussion, a very wonderful book by Raghunath Das Goswami. In his Mangalacharna for the book, in his first verse, he speaks to us in a very practical way. He says, Pratista Rajubirbadham Kama Dharvatmapatibihi Chittatu Sanganantasan Agade Pantu Mambata. He said, I want to go to Vrindavan. I remember sometimes devotees used to want to go to Radhakund, but it was considered very dangerous. And I knew one Mataji, even she had gone to Radhakund for Radhakund Prakat at midnight. And when she went back, there was a tree fallen in the road. And the taxi she was with, he slowed down. As soon as he slowed down, a bunch of men with guns jumped out. And one of them had a shotgun. And without any hesitation, he just fired off both barrels at the windshield of the car and smashed the windshield. Miss Mataji was shot in the chest. She survived. And the taxi driver panicked and spun the car around and drove off very, very quick. So it used to be said, you don't take that road after dark. I still think it's probably not such a good idea, although it's not as dangerous today as it was then. So Raghunath Das Goswami is speaking like this, I'm on the road of bhakti, but there's these Vartmapatibi, these highwaymen, these robbers who've come, and they're binding me up. Rajabir Bhadam, they're tying me up with ropes. And what is the rope they're tying me up with? Pratishta Rajabir. The desire to be a big, big person. And those ropes, Pratishta Rajabir Bhadam, Kama Adhyarvatmapati Bihi, along with lust and anger. Because as soon as you have Pratishta, then you have lust. As Bhakti Dear Damodar Maharaj once commented in a very beautiful way I really like, he said that Haridas Thakur is the incarnation of Lord Brahma. But what's the difference between the two of them? Lord Brahma became agitated by sexual desires for his own daughter, Hare Krishna. Whereas Haridas Thakur, when Maya Devi personified, came to him and said, I don't know, whatever she said, hubba hubba baby or whatever it was, she made some indecent proposal to Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was unmoved. How is it that Haridas Thakur is unmoved, but Lord Brahma has this desire? What's the difference? And Bhakti Dear Damodar Maharaj said that Lord Brahma was a manager, and Haridas Thakur was just a very humble sadhak. This is pratishta, and this pratishta goes with lust, because you may be a very important person, but then what do you do with it? You have to attract a man. I am the most beautiful woman. Well, so what? What do you do with it? You have to attract a man. Otherwise, your beauty has no point. And this is pratishta. You may be a big, big manager, a big, big important person. What's the value of it? I have to attract a beautiful young girl. So this pratishta gives birth to lust. And he says that Please, I'm tied up with these ropes. I can't go anywhere. What can I do? Chitvata sangarantasta agare pantumam bataha. I'm calling out to those devotees of Krishna, who's agare panta, who is the killer of the aga demon. Aga is considered to be sin personified. And Krishna is the killer of agasura. May those devotees come and chitvatas. May they come and cut these ropes. And how do they cut those ropes? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says that the nature of the sadhu is that the sadhu makes us speak out whatever is on our mind and our heart. And then he takes the knife. He puts our heart on the sacrificial block. And he takes a knife in the form of unpleasant language and he cuts by speaking in a very, very harsh way. And so the devotees, they'll save me. But we have to call out to these devotees. Again, Raghunath Das Goswami, in his Manasiksha, we should understand the writings of our 6 Goswamis. If we don't understand the writings of our 6 Goswamis, we can't really understand Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because at Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mano Abhishta, he understands the mind of Mahaprabhu. And Stapitam Yena Bhutala, he's established that by giving his literatures. And how is he able to establish it? How is he able to know the mind of Mahaprabhu? Because Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari. And Raghunath Das Goswami is Tulsi Manjari. So in his Manasiksha, he describes Asach Chesta Kashta Padavikata Pasali Viriha Prakamam Kamadi Prakata Patapati Vatikarai Gale Badvahanye Hamiti Baka Bidvat Mapadane Kuru Tvam Futkaran Avati Sayata Tvam Manaita. He says, oh Manaita, oh my dear mind, listen to me. He says the same thing in his 5th verse of Manasiksha that he says in the beginning of Braj Vilas Stava. He says that, my dear mind, I'm wanting to go on the path of bhakti, but he says that these prakaman, I'm being bound up by this pratapati vatikarai, these highwaymen, these robbers. And they've tied me up with ropes, the ropes of lust, the ropes of prestige, the desire to become famous. He says, Futkaran. What do I do? Futkaran doesn't mean to call out. Futkaran means I'm screaming. I'm calling out for my life. And who do I call out to? Vartmapagane. To the Vaishnavas, who are Vartmapagane, those personalities who are Vartmapagana, who are the protectors of that path. And I'm calling out, what do I call out? I don't just call out the names of the Vaishnavas. We don't just flatter someone by saying, oh Guruji, oh this, oh that. Our friend Bajabanita, she's always unhappy when people want to give us some flattering, cheap words. And that's the nature of a Vaishnava. We don't want to hear just cheap flattery. So the Vaishnavas, they're not interested in our glorification, someone just coming and saying, well, here's some money, oh, you're such a great person, you're guru, you're this, you're that. But what the Vaishnavas want to see is that we chant the names of Krishna. So he says, Futkaran, I'm calling out. And what am I calling? Hamiti Baka Bid. I'm calling out the name of Baka Bid. Krishna, Krishna, killer of Baka. Because those Vaishnavas will be very, very happy by hearing that. So this verse is practically like an echo of his verse in Braj Vilas Stava. Now I'd like to go a little deeper in these verses with a little comment. These 2 verses are very, very similar, but there's one difference. In Braj Vilas Stava, he speaks of Krishna as that personality who's the killer of the Aga demon, Agare Pantumam Bataha. That person who's the killer of Aga, Agasura, Krishna is the killer of Aga, may he protect me. And then in Manasiksha, he addresses Krishna as Bakabid. Bakabid means the killer of the demon Baka, Bakasura. Why does he use these 2 particular demons? we could give different reasons, and perhaps some acharyas have commented on them. I'm not aware of that. But I'd like to just say a little something that comes to my mind. What do these two demons, Aghasura and Bakasura, what do they have in common? They have a sister. And who is that sister? Their sister is Putana. So Raghunath Das Goswami here, he's calling out to Krishna, who's the killer of Agha and the killer of Baka, but he doesn't call out to the killer of Putana. Why? Because Aghasura and Bakasura are even less qualified than Putana. How is that? What is the qualification of Aghasura and Bakasura? What is the qualification of Putana? In the 14th chapter, the 10th canto, Sridhar Swami Bhavarta Deepika and different acharyas, they commented that how is it that she got such a position that Putana became a datri, sometimes said mother, but actually she became a datri. Datri means like a nurse, which is like a mother. She became a nurse for Krishna. And the answer they give is because Putana had one good quality, one good qualification. And what was that? She dressed herself like a devotee. That's all. She wasn't really a devotee. She didn't chant. She didn't practice any angas of bhakti or anything. But she had this one good qualification. She dressed like a devotee. So powerful it is to dress like a devotee. And then the question arises, how is it that Agha and Baka, how did they get liberation? And the answer is given because Putana is their sister. And then the next question comes, how is it that Aghasura and Bakasura, they got Kaivalya Mukti? They merged with the body of the Lord, which is considered a much, much lower kind of liberation. But Putana got seva, nitya seva in the spiritual world. How is that? And the answer is because Putana dressed like a devotee, and Agha and Baka didn't. Right? So powerful is dressing like a devotee. So indirectly, perhaps here, Raghunath Das Goswami is indicating that I'm so fallen, I'm not even as good as Putana. But I'm calling out to Krishna, who's killing Aghasura and Bakasura, and whose only qualification is their sister, which in Vedic culture is a little humbling. That your sister is the only good qualification you have, and just because of the way she dresses. And so he's teaching us, Bhagavad Vartmatapgana, that let me call out to the devotees of the Lord. Because it's only by calling out to those devotees in a mood of sincerity, in the mood of understanding that my only qualification is my disqualification. The only happiness I have is through reality. It's the ecstasy of insignificance. And this is described in many traditions. I'd like to finish with a few statements from a book I very rarely quote from. It's called the Holy Bible. In the 13th chapter of the book of Matthew, it said, the virtue of a humble person is like a treasure hid in a field. So that's the virtue of a humble person. They hide their thing like a treasure hidden in the field. Again, in Corinthians, second book, chapter 12, text 9, Jesus said, my power is fully shown in your weakness. We truly experience the power of the Lord when we're weak. And again, going on with our Christian tradition a little bit today, with one of my favorite saints, who Prabhupada said was a first-class saint, Saint Francis of Assisi. In one of his prayers, he said, in Italian, this is English translation, he said, blessed is the servant who doesn't consider himself any better when he's praised and exalted by people than when he's considered worthless, simple, and looked down upon. For what a person is what he is before God and no more. But woe, unfortunate, to that religious person who's been placed in a high position by others and who doesn't want to come down by his own will. Blessed is that servant who's not placed in a high position by his own will and always desires to be under the feet of others. This is Charnadapi Samicina. This is the ecstasy of insignificance. This is our only qualification, our disqualification. So I want to finish with another short story. This is from the late 1800s, And it's by another Christian saint. It's about a Christian saint who lived in Lucca, Italy. And this was a young girl who lived, I think, to about the age of 16, something like that. But she's considered to be a great saint in Catholicism. Her saint name was Saint Gemma. At a young age, Gemma, she realized that God is everything. And she was really nothing without him. And so, seeing herself as nothing before God, she was attracted to things that would humble her. And she, as we would say in America, she checked out from her family life with her parents and told them, I want to move into the nunnery. I want to become a nun. I don't want to get married. I don't want to go through all this. I want to dedicate my life to God because I'm nothing. And so while she was there, she had one director of that nunnery. His name was Father Germanus. And one day he decided that he would test the humility of Saint Gemma. And he told her, he said, Gemma, why would Jesus want to dirty himself with the cesspit that is Gemma? Now, for those of you who may not know, cesspit's not such a common word. Cesspit is a place where the stool and urine goes. And when she heard that, a big smile came on Gemma's face, and she became full of great joy because she found in those words what she'd been looking for a long time, which is the best phrase that she could apply to herself. And so she began praying like that. Dear Jesus, why do you want to dirty yourself with the cesspit that's Gemma? And it said that on one occasion her guardian angel appeared before her. And she explained, no, don't touch me, don't soil your hands with the cesspit. A similar mood that Sanatana Goswami had we hear in Chaitanya Charitamrita when Mahaprabhu wanted to embrace him. He said, no, I'm so dirty, I'm so fallen, I have these sores all over my body. Her spiritual director, Gemma, ordered her to write an autobiography. And she exaggerates in that biography the severity of her sins. In fact, she titled her autobiography, The Notebook of My Sins. This is the story of my life. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings in one song, Amara Jivan Sada-pape. This is my life. I'm always doing all kinds of sin. So we should understand that our only qualifications are disqualification. When we feel humble, then we don't mind acknowledging our faults. And we get creative with our limitations. Persons who are narcissistic, who think that they're the most important person in the world, they resist humility. They think humility is a kind of humiliation or something, and we don't want that. That's nonsense. But when that pride comes over us, and that pride, it closes up our heart. We use that pride sometimes to defend ourselves from other people. That when someone wants to criticize us, if someone doesn't give proper respect to us, then we hold our head very high. We put out our chest, and, I'm a very big person, don't you know? 200 people watched my last class. I live streamed on Facebook. And so we try to defend ourselves with this pride. But that pride, it closes off our heart, whereas humility is just the opposite. Humility opens up our heart, and it allows other people to come inside. But it's not such an easy thing to do. Humility also, it opens the door to wisdom, and it makes our spiritual growth possible. People sometimes they're looking for a kind of a magical circle. That, if I have, I've got almost 5,000 Facebook friends. That's our magical circle. And everybody clicked like on the class that I gave and listen. That's the magical circle. And if we're trying to impress that magical circle, if that's our whole purpose of our life, to be a hero on Facebook and we get likes and things, then we're actually, although we think we're in a circle, we're actually in exile. We're actually living alone because we can't associate them with the devotees, because we put up this wall of pride which closes our hearts. And we've done that to ourselves. So we have to ask ourselves a very difficult question. What if I tell the truth and I lose my membership in the magic circle? Can I do that? Can I actually humble myself? Can I actually be fallen like Gemma and openly admitting, yes, I'm a cesspit? How many of us write on Facebook, yes, my realization today, I'm like a cesspit. That's my realization today. So, but the nature of that so-called magic circle that we want to live in, where everybody's glorifying us, that's just illusion. We're putting on a show for other people just to get some acceptance and some social prestige and things. And that keeps us from advancing in bhakti. And even we see sometimes devotees, they say, well, Prabhu, I know I should be humble, but for preaching, I have to advertise myself. Because if I don't advertise myself, then who's going to listen? And it's a fact. If you advertise yourself on Facebook, if you share your videos all over the place in the Bhagavad Gita forum, which has, 1 million people or something taking part in it, then you'll get so many thousands of likes and you'll be really, really good. But what kind of people will you impress? The people that you'll impress, you'll find to be very, very cheap people. And there'll be people that you don't really want to let into your heart. So when we are able to open up our heart, as Raghunath Das Goswami is doing in Manasiksha, is teaching us, and he's doing it in Brajabilastava, by being brutally honest of our position, then we can open up our heart and the Vaishnavas can come into our heart. And then we allow that humility to come in. And we recognize that I have no good qualification. The only qualification I have is my disqualification. So I'm going to stop there. It's a little later than I wanted to go. And I want to ask the devotees who are online and here physically also, if anybody has any reflections or comments. Madhupati Prabhu from Budapest has commented regarding the St. Francis story. He says, on my journey, the person who helped me the most before I got the mercy of my Guru Maharaj was Nam Ruchi Prabhu. Madhupati is such a special devotee. He said, when I joined, I was 51. Very few people join when they're 51. Most people join in their 20s or something like that. You had to be a special person to join when you're 51. He said, he's a special person. He said, when I joined, I was 51. A distinguished professional, successful person. Nam Ruchi Prabhu was the only devotee who didn't show me any respect, but chopped off my huge anarthas with an axe. Although he could be my son by age, he treated me and chastised me like I really was, a minor fool, an uncouth person, not even a human being. I'll be eternally grateful to him. I don't know what Nam Ruchi Prabhu is going to think if he hears about this. That's a very beautiful comment. Thank you so much. What a beautiful comment. We can actually be a little humble. We can actually admit to our own fallen position. And although we may lose that magic circle, we may think we lose that magic circle. It's like the girls in high school who want to be appreciated by all the popular girls. And if you don't dress in the right way, if you don't look the most beautiful and have a boyfriend on the football team or something, then they don't want you in their circle. What do you want to associate people like that for? We want to have the real magic circle as a circle of sincere Vaishnavas who turn out a piece of each other. Mamu Thakur has commented, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for sharing and giving us your time. I have a question regarding a point of cultivation of humility. For myself, my tendency is unfortunately to just become narcissistic in an even more negative sense without turning so much to Krishna and Vaishnavas, but just becoming absorbed still in myself. How can I attempt to rectify this tendency? Krishna Kun, you can correct me. Was it Ranjan Maharaj who made the comment once? He said, well, you have two choices. You can humble yourself by yourself, or you can let Krishna humble you through the material nature. When you get smashed. It's a lot more pleasant if you do it yourself. But we have two choices. We can get the kick of Lord Nityananda Prabhu through suffering in this material world, through when our body gets diseased, through when people reject us and people come to hate us and whatever. And we can develop humility in that way. Or we can voluntarily bow down our head. And by bowing down our head, although it may be artificial, a wonderful thing happens. I've seen in India a number of times. I remember once on the bank of the Ganga here in Mayapur, I was getting ready to take a bath, and I noticed there was a grihasta couple there, a young lady and her husband, and their guru. Clearly their guru was with them. And I just happened to notice the lady, before she took bath, she first went and touched the feet of her husband. And then she turned to the guru and touched his feet. And I've seen many, many times in India, young children, they go and they touch the feet of their parents. Now, that looks really sweet and looks really humble, but if you go and talk with them, they may not actually be feeling so much by going and touching the feet. It's just a thing that I do, right? It's just a mechanical ritual that I do. But something happens when you do that mechanical ritual, even if it's mechanical. They touch you on the head, and you see a smile on their face. You please that person. So even though that humility may be artificial, if we show humility before the Vaishnavas, if we humble ourselves before them, then we get their blessings. And that blessing of the Vaishnavas, when we open up our heart even a little bit, by even showing some artificial humility, it's opening our heart a little bit, then the mercy of the Vaishnavas can come inside of our heart. And the opposite of that is when we build a big wall around our heart to defend ourselves against the harsh words of others. And that wall is called pride. And we want to present ourselves as a big devotee, a senior person, this and that. And then our heart doesn't get that mercy from the Vaishnavas. So I hope that's some help when we talk with you. Anybody else? Satyatananda Prabhu, do you have any reflections you want to share? So if I speak real loud, you don't have a mic to talk.
I would say first, thank you very much for all the variety of information that you give, examples of from the Bible and from the Francis of Assisi and that poet, writer, and all that together brings, like good information about what is the nature of life and how do we do. So in regards to humility, sometimes all this is, of course, applicable only for persons who are searching after the real truth or enlightenment or becoming free from all this material entanglement. But for people who works outside, it wouldn't work at all, any of this. Not at all. So, and again, thank you. But I remember also that Srila Prabhupada one time, one disciple asked him, he said, real humility, Prabhupada said, real humility is when you don't depend on your gun, your intelligence, your education, your money in the bank, insurance, friends. Nothing like that will work. Only Krishna. And when you take shelter of Krishna, then everything that's real humility. And this is a question that I have now to you. You were mentioning about, this is a question now, you were mentioning about the two demons and the sister, Putana. And the difference between Putana and the other two, why did she achieve that such a highest position in regards to, and why not the brothers? But the only qualification that she has, you mentioned, is that she wore a Vaishnav dress. Now, my question in this is that there's a few people there that we know that actually this is, well, it doesn't, dhotis or saris doesn't make a devotee, and we've seen there's many, how do you say, it can be a lot of controversy. Can you explain that more?
Yeah, we shouldn't think that someone's a devotee just because of their dress. Satyatananda Prabhu was just asking this question. He and I, we both joined in the temple in LA, and we both marked over the years that the gift shop would sell many, many more dhotis in the late month of October than they would other times. And they would sell them to non-devotees. It's a very startling thing. We couldn't figure it out. Why is that? And then every year on the night of Halloween, we'd go to Hollywood Boulevard, I think they still do that, on Halloween night for doing Harinam, and they would meet some of those people who bought the dhotis, only now they're drunk. And there's just college boys who go to buy a dhoti in Kurta, and they dress up like a Hare Krishna devotee, and then so many of them think it's hysterically funny that they're dressed like a devotee, and there's the Hare Krishna devotees, and they always get their friends to take their picture, and they're enthusiastically dancing in an exaggerated kind of way with the devotees. So they're doing something, and they're getting some benefit from that. But don't think that just because someone wears a dhoti, that means they're a devotee. We shouldn't be so cheap. A devotee is something much, much more. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one place, he says that if we think that the external symbols of a Vaishnava are the qualification of a devotee, he says that's a kind of sectarianism. We should learn to respect people by their qualities. At the same time, we have to comment that if someone dresses in a sari or in a dhoti, then people think of you as a Hare Krishna. I traveled all over America for years doing book distribution in a van, so to Sachitanaya Prabhu. And we would wear wigs, we'd wear Western clothes, and people didn't know we were Hare Krishna devotees. And I had a certain experience with that. And when people sometimes would figure out that you're actually a Hare Krishna, sometimes they would become very angry and offended. Now, let's fast forward. It's been a year since I was in America, but the last few years in America, I was traveling by plane, and wherever I went, I was dressed in a dhoti and kurta. And I found, to my surprise, because I was expecting people were going to hate me because I thought they didn't like the Hare Krishna devotees, but I found that wherever I went, people say, "Oh, Hare Krishna," and they were very, very friendly. And then many times they would come and say, can you tell me something about your teachings or something? And I found for myself, it was also a kind of protection. Because when we're around the non-devotees, Madhupati, I see your comment, I love it. I'm going to mention about this, the Buchu festival. That's the best example. We'll come to that in a moment. I found that people just give me so much respect because I was dressed like that. And when you're dressed like that, then naturally they think you're a Hare Krishna and they want to come and talk to you. Whereas if I was dressed in Western clothes and had hair and things, they wouldn't recognize me, and it might be dangerous. Some pretty girl might come and try to take me away, or somebody might offer me something which is a wrong thing to take. Madhupati was pointing out New Brajadam in Hungary, in a wonderful farm there, they have a Buchu festival, which is a harvest festival, and they have a market there. And I didn't catch your comment. He says, on one occasion, some tax inspectors came disguised as devotees with tilak, etc. So did they get any benefit? Yes, they get some benefit because they're thinking of Krishna. And they're trying to imitate a devotee. One Srila Prabhupada said, he told the devotees in Australia, don't think that you're Vaishnavas. He said, you're just like actors on the stage. You're dressing up like Vaishnavas. He said, but there's a benefit to being an actor on the stage, because then you get to learn the mood of the role you're portraying. In Los Angeles, I used to play in the dramas oftentimes, and sometimes I was Lakshman, or I was Nityananda once, I remember. And when you play that role, you really get in the mood of that personality and learn something about them. I want to also comment about, when I just saw the word Buchu festival there, it reminded me of something else. A service which I got the opportunity to do, I think 2 years in a row in New Brajadam. They have a special tent. And they have so many tents where you can buy prasadam and you can get flowers, you can get some decorations, gopi dots, and they charge a little money or something for it. But there's one tent which was like, maybe the prasadam tent was the most popular, but this second tent was so popular, there was a big queue waiting for that tent. What was that tent? They called it the reality tent. And what it was, everybody's waiting in line. There's all these non-devotees, big stomachs, and just, I'm sorry, gross materialistic people, not chanting at all. And they're standing in line to do what? To get a chance to dress up like a Hare Krishna devotee for 10 minutes. And they give some money, and they put a dhoti on the guys and a kurta, and they put some tilak on. It's a trick. It's not actually tilak, but it's paint. And it doesn't come off very easy. So they're stuck with the tilak for the rest of the day. And they give them this thing, and then they send them, and they have different devotees in different chambers. The ladies, of course, wear sari, and they have a separate place to dress, and the men wear a dhoti, and they put tilak on them. And then they brought them to me. And my job was that we give them beads, and we talk to them about chanting Hare Krishna. We get them all to chant one round of the Hare Krishna mantra, because they want to know, what is it like to be a Hare Krishna devotee? So now they get the chance the reality booth, and they dress up, and then they go and they chant one round, and then they take them to the next part, and there's some devotees, and they teach them how to make puris and halava. And then they're cooking, and then the last part of it, there's deities of Gaur Nitai. And there's another devotee who said, now we're going to teach you how to offer it. And they bow down before the deities, they chant some prayer, they give their money, and then they put their Western clothes on. You go, wow, that was really cool. I got to experience that. What was that, Krishna? Yeah, you can buy if you want, you can buy the sari, you can buy the dhoti. I don't think many of them buy the dhotis, but some of the ladies buy the saris. And it's the most popular booth after Prasadam, maybe, at the Buchu festival. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Right? Amarendra Prabhu, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Amarendra Prabhu, if you don't know him, is such a wonderful speaker. Although he's younger than me, he's much, much superior to me in so many ways. I feel humbled that you're listening to our katha today. I'm surprised. He says, Prabhu, how do we differentiate being sharp in discrimination from being judgmental? For example, someone wearing Vaishnava clothes may be chanting Hare Krishna, practicing the philosophy superficially, but we may not want to resonate our mood with them for personal reasons. Are we being judgmental, or is this effective discrimination? Well, we all have to discriminate. Life means discrimination. When we drink water, we discriminate. I drink water from a pure source. I don't drink water from a ditch. When we discriminate, when we buy food, when we eat, and who we associate with. Discrimination means life. Life means discrimination. We have to do that. But according to our position also in life, we'll have to discriminate in another kind of way. If we're a temple president and we see someone who's dressed like a devotee, or maybe even acting like a senior devotee, but they're not practicing the principles, then we have an obligation to chastise them. Whereas if we're a rank and file devotee like myself, and we see someone like that, then we may choose to keep a distance from them, but we still give some respect to them. In Bengali, we say, Durteki Dandabari, I offer my respects from a distance. I offer respect to that dress. I may see a sannyasi. There's a famous story that once Srila Prabhupada was with a group of disciples. I heard this from one of his disciples, and they were, what's the name of the place in Vrindavan? When you arrive on the highway to Vrindavan, you can go to Govardhan, you can go left to Vrindavan. You're coming from Delhi. What's it? What's that one? Chatikar. Yeah. In Chatikar, Prabhupada was walking once with some of the disciples, and there was some Ramakrishna mission sannyasis, they were like Mayavadis. And they came and they saw Prabhupada and they said, oh, Namo Narayan, which is how the Mayavadi sannyasis are treated. And Prabhupada said, Krishna Mathura story, he said Hare Krishna or something. And bowed his head too, and they kept going. And all of a sudden Prabhupada stopped and he slammed his cane down on the ground. And he turned to the devotee and said, why didn't you offer obeisances to them? And they said, Prabhupada, they're Mayavadis. And Prabhupada said, they're sannyasis. You should offer respect to that dress. So we should give respect if someone just wearing Vaishnava dress. Krishneti yashagaditam manasadriyeta. Anyone who's just chanting Hare Krishna. I remember the first Harinam I went on. I don't know, maybe Sachitananda might have been there. At that time I was Bhakta Mark. And they had these big leather boots. Those are the only shoes I had. And they gave me a dhoti. I was really a strange looking character. And they took us to on the beach there? Venice Beach. Took us to Venice Beach. And I was dancing in the kirtan with my leather boots. And someone threw an egg and hit me in the head with the egg. And at the time I thought, oh God, what am I supposed to do? And I thought, well, anyway, I'm supposed to be a spiritual person, so I'm just going to keep dancing in ecstasy. And our bhakta leader, Pushpadanta Prabhu, became a little unhappy, he wiped it off my face from me. So we have to discriminate. But that person who threw that egg at me, he said Hare Krishna. So he's an exalted person. And I can, Rupa Goswami says I should respect him. Maybe I don't appreciate the egg in the face, but I can appreciate that he chanted Hare Krishna, because just to say Krishna's name is such an exalted thing. So that's part of our discrimination. And therefore Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his song Guru Dev Kripa Bindu Diya, he sings that Deho Nata Jata Jata, that he prays to Gurudev, when will that day come when I can learn to properly give respect according to a different person's position? So this discrimination is a deep thing, and it's a matter of culture. Someone who has deep culture, someone like Amarendra Prabhu, who was raised in Vaishnava culture his whole life, they can understand the subtleties of Vaishnava culture and how we dress and how we speak and how we wait to take prasadam until the senior devotee starts to take. We don't start taking until all the Vaishnavas get prasadam and some senior devotee starts to take. We learn these subtle types of discrimination. And there's other more gross types of discrimination too. But being a Vaishnava means we need to learn to discriminate. It's very, very important. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that subtle discrimination is extremely important for a Vaishnava. So I hope that helps. I think Amarendra Prabhu was just trying to churn the nectar. If you don't know Amarendra Prabhu, you can Google him. He gets like 10,000 hits on his lectures and things. You know him from the Los Angeles. Amazing speaker, wonderful devotee. Thank you for chatting with Prabhuji. Anybody else here would like to have any reflection to share? Krishna, can you have something? Do you want to speak in front of the computer for a minute? I'll ask Anapani to take it around and show everybody's face, okay? And then last you can show Giri Raj, go over there. And Krishna can look at you, say something. There's Krishna Kun, that's Krishna, but she doesn't want to talk in front of the computer. You got to see her.
We see the Lord's power when we are weak.
You have to speak really loud, or you have to
We
listen.
see the Lord's power when we are weak.
We see the Lord's power when we're weak. She liked that from the Bible. The Bible's not all bad. It has some cool verses too. And now we have Anapani Radha. Do you want to make any comments? Okay. And then I'm going to ask her she can speak in front of the computer. And then I'm going to ask her to
See,
take
it's
it
not
around.
because it's open in the sun, it's really good lighting.
No, there's no somebody.
Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you so much for this class. There are so many things, really important things.
Come over here and
but
speak loud.
for me, it was really nice. I was happy to hear about Mahaprabhu's Shikshashtaka, that it was his swan song, and he put his heart in these prayers. And this last chapter from Chaitanya is so important for us. And also I marked for myself that you said we have to understand Mahaprabhu, we have to understand Goswami. So
To understand Mahaprabhu, we have
to understand Goswami.
We have to understand the Goswamis. She's appreciating 2 points. I think she spoke so soft, no one could hear her. She's saying she appreciated how Mahaprabhu's swan song is the Shikshashtaka prayers, and how to understand Mahaprabhu and his teachings, we have to go through the 6 Goswamis. So I want to stop there and thank everybody very much for taking part. We're going to be back again on Sunday, but before we go, Anapani Radha is going to carry the computer around, and you can see the smiling face of all the devotees here. They can hear right now.
No, if I say something here, and she comes.
Yeah.
You want to say something?
Hare Krishna. For the Prabhu name Amarendra, he doesn't know me, but I listen to his lectures, wonderful lectures. And the way I knew is because my brother, he lives in Arizona, he said, oh, you have to listen to his lectures. Then I started listening. Wow. Thank you, Prabhu, my oasis. Hare Krishna.
That was such an honor.
Hare Krishna. Shama Priya Mataji.
And there was Krishna. And now we have the start of the show. Giriraj Govardhan. Giriraj Maharaj Ki. Shiva Maharaj Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Vanchakalpa Vinubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyev.